Joining me right now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is Florida Congressman Byron Donalds, who is supporting President Trump for a second term. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria. Good to be back with you.
Well, you just heard from Jamie Dimon on his thoughts. He's a Democrat, and he understands that it's policy, Democrat policy, that is behind what we're all experiencing here. That's a topic in Iowa. Let's talk about the Iowa caucuses, your reaction to President Trump now having the largest lead in Des Moines Register history.
Well, first, I think it's indicative of the fact that the people of Iowa remember how the country was running, how efficient it was, how our borders were secured, and how the world was actually at peace when President Trump was running the White House and he was running our country. People in Iowa want to get back to that. And look, no disrespect to Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and Vivek Ramaswamy, but they've never done this job. Donald Trump has. So the pressure in Iowa is not on President Trump. It's on these other three candidates. Can they demonstrate any ability to get close to Donald Trump and the actual result? Because if they cannot, Maria, this thing is going to be game, set, and match, because Donald Trump, in my view, is going to win New Hampshire. He's going to win South Carolina decisively, and then we're just going to run away and get the whole nomination.
Well, he could get the nomination locked up then by middle of March, given the calendar of these primaries. But who has the most to lose here? Let's walk through what we're seeing in Iowa. Nikki Haley is at 20%, and the rest follow her. Obviously, President Trump with a commanding lead. But walk us through your thoughts in terms of Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. Where do they go now?
Well, I think for Ron DeSantis, he's the one who has the most to lose. He's invested the most into Iowa. They've been speaking a lot about this massive ground campaign that they've done there. But from every report, it just hasn't moved the needle. I'm going to be on the ground. I'm going to be on the ground in Iowa tomorrow. I'll see firsthand. But at the end of the day, the voters of Iowa, like the voters in every other state in the country, they want a return of Donald Trump, because it's very simple, Maria. He knows how to do the job. He knows how to get the country back on track. He did it once. He can do it again. And that's why you're seeing the results polling wise in Iowa. The big thing is going to be turnout. Obviously, you know, it's a massive snowstorm blizzard up there. It is bitterly cold. I got my long johns ready to return to the north. Maria used to grow up in New York City, now down in Florida. I got my long johns ready for tomorrow. But I'm going to tell you, I think the intensity of voters are behind Donald Trump more than the other candidates.
And in terms of Nikki Haley, where does she go now? Over the weekend, Senator Rand Paul came out with his own opinions, saying never Nikki. What do you think happened here? There is a small group of people who are trying to convince Donald Trump to take on Nikki Haley as a VP. Your thoughts?
Well, look, I mean, it's too early about the Veep stakes. We'll see what happens as this campaign continues. But I think for Nikki Haley, her holy grail is looking to be New Hampshire. She's trying to do a good job, which is why they're not putting out any information about how Iowa is going to go. They're really looking at New Hampshire. They need to get within 10 points of Donald Trump in New Hampshire to give her an opportunity to even be able to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump. I just don't think it's going to happen. The support for President Trump in the Republican Party is overwhelming, Maria, especially when you look at how disastrous Joe Biden has been. The 46th president is the worst. He's the master of disaster. Everything is going wrong. People want Donald Trump back. That's what's going to happen in my view. Nikki Haley's holy grail is going to look like New Hampshire. If she's not within 10 points in New Hampshire, like I said earlier, this thing is over.
How important are the corruption issues that we talk about? Look, I understand the issues in terms of pocketbook issues. People understand the difference in the economy under President Trump versus all of this inflation and spending that we're talking about. But what about corruption? Your investigation and your colleagues in the Oversight Committee exposing the money that the Biden family has taken in. Is this a factor in Iowa?
Oh, I definitely think it is. And I think it's a factor in all 50 states, because the American people are now seeing the level of corruption going with the Biden family. They see Hunter Biden just ignoring a congressional subpoena, something no American citizen would ever be able to get away with. Hunter Biden not only ignores the subpoena, he comes into open hearing and flaunts members of the Oversight Committee, flaunts members of Congress with his arrogance. I think this is disgusting what's occurred here. And so, in my view, next week, the House of Representatives is going to hold him in contempt of Congress. When that occurs, then the big question is going to be for Merrick Garland and Maine Justice. Are you going to prosecute the president's son for being in violation of a congressional subpoena and holding him in contempt? He's not an administrative employee. He's never worked for the federal government. The choice in prosecution is clear. This sets up a terrible double standard for the Democrats, but it's one of their own making because they have been persecuting President Trump, using the legal system against their political opponent. Meanwhile, the level of corruption in the Biden family has been covered up by the same Department of Justice.
Which is why you are also looking at the weaponization of this government and trying to take that down. I want to get your take on the key groups that you believe will be supporting President Trump in November. We see reports of minorities moving over to Trump. How does the African-American vote look right now, in general?
Oh, look, I think in general it's going to be well over 15%, could crest as high as 25%. Depending on the dynamics, it could go higher because you said it at the open, you and Jamie Dimon, Maria, food prices massively up, energy prices massively up, rent massively up. And you can't blame that on Republicans. You can't blame it on Donald Trump. All this stuff happened the second Joe Biden took over as president of the United States. All of it. The southern border problem, which is much bigger than just counties on the southern border of Texas and Arizona. It's a major problem in Chicago, a major problem in New York, and other our big cities. All that because of Joe Biden. I believe that Donald Trump has a real opportunity to make major gains with working families, with minority voters, and obviously Republican voters are going to come home as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you would say 15% could go up to 25%. Why 15% so low? I would have even thought it was more than that. And I also want to get your thoughts on Michelle Obama. She said last week she's, quote, terrified about what could possibly happen in the 2024 election. Is she a factor?
Well, two things. First, let me talk to the voters. My primary concern is that the Democrats are going to do the thing that they always do, especially when it comes to black voters. They start saber rattling about voting rights, an absolute lie. That's just dog whistle politics from the Democrats. They try to bring in these wedge issues that do not matter to the American people. Everything becomes about race. Everything becomes about going back in time and all this other foolishness, especially with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. They're going to do this. Republicans, we have a responsibility to answer those ridiculous claims and demonstrate what is actually happening to all Americans, especially minority Americans under this president. If we can do that, that's where your numbers crest over 25%. Now, with respect to Michelle Obama, I heard the audio. I hear her concerns, but the problem is the guy that's in her party that's the head of our government sucks. He's terrible at the job. So all her laments about people not wanting to show up, why would they show up for a guy who has raised their prices, who has had their kids removed from school longer than they should have been during COVID-19. Now the kids are being removed from school because migrants have nowhere to go because he's brought too many migrants into the United States with his terrible policy. And oh, by the way, the world is burning. We're on the verge of multiple conflicts, involved in multiple conflicts across the globe. Under Joe Biden's presidency, we have lost 4 embassies, something that's never happened in American history. And oh, by the way, the Secretary of Defense, he was in the hospital and nobody knew about it. Michelle Obama should be concerned with Joe Biden, not the voters of America.
I mean, obviously, they weren't having any meetings on the 131 attacks our troops in the Middle East have had. If they were having meetings, they would have noticed that their defense secretary wasn't in the meeting. But real quick on this agreement on a new stopgap spending bill, are you going to agree to a continuing resolution to keep this government open? And what does that mean for the wide open border?
No, I'm not in agreement with this spending bill. I'm not even in agreement on the continuing resolution. We have a massive problem at our southern border. It must be done now. It must be fixed now. And if you give the Democrats money to fund the government, they will continue to ignore the problem. Maria, when Joe Biden first came into office, encounters at the southern border were a little over 92,000 encounters. Last month, it was well over 330,000 encounters. And the deal that came out of the Senate was for for 150,000 encounters a month, that's a bad deal. The Democrats are not serious on this. So in my view, secure the border. If the border is not secured, this government does not deserve to be funded. We will fund the Department of Defense. We'll pay our troops. We'll take care of our veterans and VA. We'll even make sure border agents are paid to have some semblance of security.
Yeah.
But the rest of this government doesn't deserve money if our border continues to be open the way that it is.
Congressman, real quick, do you think Michelle Obama is running in November?
No, I don't. I actually think that she enjoys being private and enjoying the private life. I think she wants to comment like Barack Obama wants to comment, but I don't think she's running.
All right. We'll leave it there. Good to see you, sir. Thanks very much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.